Hello, everybody. This is Henry Schneider from the Process Performance Podcast. And today it's my distinct pleasure to talk with Susan Schwartz, a consultant and speaker who's been able to help technical people identify those intangible leadership skills and come up with an action plan on how to move forward with it. So welcome, Susan.
Hi, thank you very much, Henry. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. So to begin with, Susan, could you please briefly describe what your company is, your customers, and the kinds of services you provide to them?
Thank you, Henry. The River Birch Group is my own company, and I've been in business for the last 20 years, and I work with a variety of people as we put together solutions for different companies. I can bring in experts for those areas that require customization and can meet those needs. What I really enjoy doing is working with smart technical people. I find that it's not just IT and telecommunications, but accountants and all levels of first-line managers who have honed their skills and really know the hard part of their job, but then they become managers and they're not quite sure how to have those difficult conversations or how to get ready for a sales presentation. And I work with people using some customized workshops, some workbooks. I published a book recently that can walk people through becoming a new manager, a new leader. And mostly we have fun and like to help people get from point A to point B in their professional career.
Wonderful. So we're talking a lot about performance and improvements here. So what is the importance of improving your skills to your clients?
Well, the importance of improving these professional skills, some people call them soft skills, I call them professional skills, is it really does affect your return on investment. When you can build a stronger team of people that improve their communications, you can get the job done more quickly, you can come in under budget. When you are letting people setting their expectations properly, when you identify there's a problem and then you can go through some of those difficult conversations to resolve it sooner than later. Sometimes it's creating a safe place. I find many organizations or people within organizations don't feel that they can fail anymore. So they're afraid of bringing bad news to people because they're afraid if they bring bad news, they'll get fired.
Yeah.
And so one of the benefits of that we found working with our customers is a return on investment improves, but also they become a better place to work. The culture improves, the culture enhances, and their turnover rate decreases significantly. And so even though it sounds a little touchy-feely, taking the time and working to create that positive atmosphere will help not your bottom line, both in the product and maintaining your people and keeping the best people with you for a longer amount of time.
Wonderful. So what are one or two of your biggest myths or misconceptions out there when it comes to improving performance or the emotional quotient?
Well, working with the emotional quotient assessment, I have so many, very often when people hear the word emotional intelligence, and I was the same way in the 90s, I was a technical person too. And when I first heard about Goldman's work, I went, feelings don't belong in the workplace. But when you look at emotional intelligence, what it does is there's 5 primary composites. And the first one describes how you view the world and the world views you. The second one, when you have that message, that personal message, how do you express it to the rest of the world? The third one is how well you play with other people, interdependence. Then you have decision making and how you handle stress. And so it's all about balance and about being engaged. So you're not given the whole emotional quotient inventory is based on the normal curve. So 100 is right in the middle. If you get a score of 100, you're average. That's great. That means you're as engaged as 50% of the people, as far as, say, interdependence or how well you work with other people. But the key is that we all have strengths and weaknesses. And so one of the examples, I have a dear friend who's a CPA and a project manager. She is also an introvert. And so she has honed really strong email communication skills, that's self-expression. And people have complimented her. She works for one of the global large accounting firms. And they say, we love being on your team because we know what the project is, what we need to do, and when it's due. And she is able to express it in one message. And I laughed at her because the reason she's gotten so good at those emails is she doesn't want them calling her back. Whereas how many of us have other people would prefer to have that conversation, and the email is so very hard, they write 5 paragraphs, and we still don't know when the project is due. So you have to pick up the phone and speak to them. And that shows that balance back and forth. And that's when you realize where your weaknesses are, you can get people on your team to help you out with where you're weaker.
Yeah, so I imagine a lot of these things are common to everybody, but you start thinking about the demographics now. You've got millennials and Generation X and Generation Z. Do you have to modify it to deal with the different groups coming up into the workforce?
Well, I think it's all about context. And the one fact that with emotional intelligence is the more work and life experience you have, the more you get to practice, the more engaged you are at these different levels. So someone who is, say, in their late 20s, early 30s, and just taking on leadership responsibilities may be lesser engaged than they will be in 10 more years. And so I think it's all about context. And where you are and where the rest of your team is and how you blend together.
So how do you help people get over these fears and challenges?
Well, I'm a big believer in breathing. Breathing is very good. And several reasons. One is the scientific fact that when you breathe, oxygen gets to your brain. And so you can think more clearly with that little bit of extra oxygen. And I think a lot of us feel uncomfortable in silence and feel we have to answer immediately. But if you can take 2 breaths, that lets, if it's a highly charged situation, everybody can calm down. And then you can perhaps ask a question instead of giving an answer that might spur a conversation, by asking somebody else's opinion. But in that heat of the moment, you need to stop and breathe twice, get that good oxygen to your brain so that you can think more clearly and think about responding with a question and not just off the cuff, not something that you'll regret saying the minute it leaves your lips.
So in your workshops, how do you put people in situations like that so they can practice it?
Well, we do a lot of small groups. We will try to bring, if people have an experience within their office, an activity that they talk about, we'll reenact it. So within the workshop, we do review people's their assessment reports from the EQI inventory, and I do have some canned scenarios that we'll use that seem to be common and people can relate to. But it's always a little bit more effective if someone might bring a situation that they've had experience with, and then we can work through that. And in those do-over moments, you have the hindsight capability of.
Well, I'm just wondering, I mean, sometimes it's like you want, you can kind of structure it as a scenario, but you don't necessarily get the emotional aspect in there. So you need to trigger that somehow, and that's what I was kind of curious at. How do you trigger the anger or the conflict?
Well, so often people take their work so personally these days, it doesn't take very long to trigger. As they start to relive those moments, we all get to relive the emotion with them.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, so tell me about your recent working with the forensic accountants, which was outside of your comfort zone, and how did you handle that?
Well, a friend of mine had seen me a presentation I'd given on emotional intelligence. It's not an oxymoron. And she is a forensic accountant. And so she brought me into her local chapter for some continuing education. And I was very nervous. As you said, it was outside of my comfort zone. And so I kept asking her to share a scenario or walk me through a day in the life of, so I could adapt the course to meet those needs. Well, I was living in the Washington, D.C. area at that time, and several of the people in that group were high secure government clearances. So I finally, when she wouldn't give me the information I was hoping she'd share, I said, "Oh, Washington, they'll have to shoot me." She said, "Yes." The security issue. And she kept telling me that it was all very similar to project management and technology engineering management that I was familiar with. So I took a deep breath and I went into the class using the materials I'd developed. And I did the mea culpa that if they would like to share their own examples during class, I was open to it, but that I'd been told there wasn't a lot of difference, but I was open to adapt. And what I discovered within the first hour, 2 hours max, the only difference between IT and telecommunications work unit and the forensic accountant work unit was that they call their work unit cases and IT people call their work unit projects. All of the people issues, the professional skills issues, the coordination, the communication, everything was exactly the same. And that was, people are people wherever you go. And when we're looking at those professional skills, or, it really is the success of those people who are strong leaders versus those people who don't quite make the mark, is having those professional skills that they can kind of tie together. And it's what we were talking about a little bit before, is it's kind of like making a salad. It's not an exact recipe. If you're going to brew beer or bake bread, it has to be exact. But this is more like a big vegetable soup. You're going to get a lot of different ingredients coming together, and it'll just make a really robust flavor the more varied the ingredients are.
So what would you say is the moral of your story then?
The moral of my story is, well, first, you never want to be on the other end of a forensic accountant's questions if it happens to be your books. But I think the moral of my story is that at the end of the day, independent of discipline, it's the people that make the difference. And the best leaders are those people who help other people become their best selves. It's really, I like to say leadership is not a solo sport. It's leaders help other people work together to become a strong team together. It's not a series of individuals. The strength comes from, I hate to say ties that bind, but it's the interweavings of the people and how they work together.
Okay. All right. So what are some of the common pitfalls or mistakes that people make that they need to keep in mind when they're trying to understand the intangible leadership skills they need to develop?
Well, the first thing you have to do is forgive yourself. You need to try, and it takes practice, and it may not always work the first time. But you need to, and everybody may not come to work on their best day. So, you need to not only forgive yourself, but be forgiving of others and take that high road. It's so easy to feel in some situations, you might feel that everybody's against you, but sometimes you just need to take that higher road and work to build consensus. And in order to build consensus, you need to build inclusion.
Okay.
So I guess the third one is if you walk into an environment that's us against them, the first thing you need to do is to figure out what is the common goal that everybody has. Do you all work for the same company? I mean, at the end of the day, if the company fails, you all don't have a job.
Yeah.
And then start to build up where your common mission is. And then you can start to work. You need to get X from us in order to perform your work, or we need to get something from you on time. They may not realize that you have a schedule and what your schedule is. And once you share that information, then everybody's part of the solution.
Okay.
Is that helpful?
Yeah. So that also kind of makes me think about like when you've got a large company with multiple cultures that need to be integrated. So could you talk about when you worked with the large global firm with global teams with people all around the world and how you brought them all together?
Well, it was one step at a time and a lot of deep breaths, but this was back when the internet was just starting. And I was their international director of product management. We were working on a blended learning project. So before I came, every single class they taught was instructor-led, and it always took 3 weeks. It didn't matter what the topic was, experience the people were. The consultants had to be out of their client chargeability for 3 weeks. So highly skilled people, the company was just loose. They couldn't bill if the consultant wasn't on the client site. And so you can see the ROI was there.
Yeah.
But people were very territorial. They were afraid that I was going to come in and take away what they built. And so what we ended up doing was working one project at a time. We worked on one instructor-led project that by humoring me, these two gentlemen were able to, it normally took them about, it was probably 8 or 9 months to make a write a instructor-led course. And I asked them to try a new technique, and they were able to write the course in about 4 or 5 weeks. And so when they realized that I was bringing some practical techniques that could help shave time, they started telling all of the other people in the global division that they should talk to me. They said, Susan has some good ideas. You should talk to her. And I was able to take the trip from Washington, D.C. headquarters to a European meeting. And these two gentlemen, they were based out of the Netherlands, asked me to stay one more day. they had been talking with the German group, and the German group was one of the people that really felt threatened by me. And they said, if you stay, we'll drive you to Germany. And so one of my favorite memories is these two drove me to Germany in a blizzard. And we walked in. It was very scary. If they were willing to take life and limb, I did it all. I was in the back seat holding on with my eyes shut.
So you're flying down the Autobahn at 80 miles an hour through a blizzard?
Through a blizzard. We didn't even stop for coffee. Through the blizzard. And we got there and we had a very short meet and greet. The director just needed to see me in person. He needed me to make the commitment and show up and listen. I did a lot of listening, and there was a 1-hour meeting, and they did the talking. And then when I left, he told his team, he left the meeting, he said, okay, you can work with her. And they were I needed them. I desperately needed them to be successful.
Cool.
And then they became a great help. But I think, active listening, paying attention, and showing up are big things to helping people realize that they are part of a greater whole.
Yeah. And there's a lot to be said for them, just to be able to face to build that relationship. It doesn't work over email or telephone. You got to be able to make eye contact, and body language makes a big difference.
Oh, true. And Zoom helps right now.
Zoom, yeah.
So it is. It's
the next best thing.
Being able to see your smile, see what color your eyes are.
So, would you spend a few minutes telling our listeners a little bit about your backstory and what defining moment inspired you to become such an advocate for identifying intangible leadership skills?
Well, there were really probably two moments. One, I was a technical person. I worked for AT&T. I worked with very large integrated voice and data systems. And I was speaking with a manager about my career path. I was in my 20s, and he looked at me and he said, "Schwartz, you'll never be a leader." Well, he didn't know that I grew up with 3 older brothers. So if you tell me I can't do something, I do it. I watched a lot of people. I started paying attention. I started observing. And then I went to work for a startup training company. And as with many startups, you get lots of opportunities. And all of a sudden, I found myself in an executive leadership position. And I wasn't exactly sure how a vice president behaved. And I started reading every single leadership book I could. And one of the reasons I'm so passionate about working with technical people and helping them unearth their inner leader, because I really believe many of us have it within themselves, is because I made so many mistakes, and there was a lot of bruises as I was learning my lessons. So if I can help someone, there are certain lessons you just have to learn on your own. But if I can help somebody smooth that path just a little bit and maybe not fall quite as often as I did, that's what drives me. That's one of the that's part of my mission.
Wonderful. So in a similar vein, a little bit, could you share an experience you had maybe early on in your life as a young woman or a little girl that still affects or influences you, how you approach business today?
Well, I was a young woman, and I was, oh my goodness, I was probably 26. And we were in a meeting. We were putting in a digital phone system in a very large university. And we had a bi-weekly meeting with the vice president of administration, very important. And the department head of telecommunications would say he wanted to make himself look good and make the two of us look bad. And he had known about a problem that we could have rectified really easily if he had told us when it happened.
Mhm.
And he saved it for this biweekly meeting.
Oh.
And this was back in the 80s where you wore suits with skirts and stockings and high heels every day. And I swear I was climbing over the table to throttle him. We were that angry, and we were climbing up. My account exec was also very young, and the two of us were like on the table. And then all of a sudden, oxygen came to our brains. We got off the table, sat down, apologized to Mr. Deal, and he looked at us and he said, ladies, conflict is not bad. It's how you handle it that makes a difference. And I think I've tried to live by those words, that constructive, when you have to have conflict to make change. But if you can turn that conflict into a discussion, into a conversation, where you're listening to the other person's side, you're understanding the entire problem, then together the two of you can resolve that issue.
Yeah.
And then I took that forward with this global software company as I was working with the different divisions, and we were making great progress. One of the software leads, my people were supposed to write the beta training, and I kept pushing him, if this is the date for the release, we have to have the training ready, and my people need so many weeks or so many days, and the numbers weren't working out. And he finally was so frustrated, he told me the truth. He said, Susan, it's going to be 9 months late. And he was beside himself. He didn't want to admit that. I was the first person he told. And so together, I was asking a lot of questions, and we realized that he needed 2 people, and he didn't have money to hire them. Well, I had 2 people who could do the job that was needed, but I didn't have any travel money. Well, he had money to pay for their travel. So we sent my 2 people over. Each of our budgets paid the appropriate budget, and we basically got the software out on time. So we saved 9 months because we addressed a really challenging issue.
Yeah, so it was a win-win for both of you.
It was a win-win all around, and isn't that the best way to handle conflict, when you can come out of it with a win-win?
Sure. And then now you got to look at what lesson did he learn from that? It sounds like planning and estimating was at the root here.
Well, planning and estimating, I think there might have been somebody left that he didn't realize. But I think what he learned was, if you don't try to hide it, the sooner you admit, when you know that there's a problem, if you just admit it, and you have a team of people who support you, that the team of people can come up with a solution. You may not see a solution.
Right.
But if you have a trusted, an informal group of trusted advisors who are in your working team, then they can help you find a solution.
All right.
We can't be solo workers.
That's right. So what does success look like for the River Birch Group and Susan Schwartz?
Well, success for me would be having organizations, what's the right word I'm looking for there? Success to me is helping organizations become more productive and higher performing, because their technical people know how to use both the left and the right sides of their brains.
Very good. So, do you have any measurable outcomes that you have achieved that you can share with us?
That is a tough one, right, at this moment, because I'm not at liberty to share specific names.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's understandable. So, what is the most important question the people who come to you should be asking when they consider the River Birch Group?
The most important question is, I would say, are they ready to look outside the box?
Mm-hmm.
I
Okay.
think what I like to do is people have been successful, moving in their current path and their model. But if they want to grow, I can help them look outside that box and help them develop people in ways that they may not have considered.
Okay. And who was your competition?
There are um, there are there are many organization development
Mm-hmm.
um, people, individual professionals, as well as larger organizations.
So how?
So there.
Okay. So what would be the most important thing your clients should consider when they evaluate the River Birch Group against your competition?
I think at this point, it would be looking at the creativity and the ability to customize the solution to meet their needs.
Okay.
And having come from that technical background and being a technical person, I really understand where that individual is, and I can help them identify a path that they can practice and learn how to try, review what worked, what didn't, adapt, and continue that learning cycle forward. So really, at the end of the day, the whole organization becomes a learning organization, so that their culture will also, we'll always have some new group we call millennial, or there'll be another type of culture. And so I think what makes for a strong organization these days is being able to look at the current culture, where you are today, where you want to be, and to figure out how to get from point A to point B and maintain that healthy interorganizational conversations and communications.
Okay. So you've been in business as the River Birch Group for nearly 2 decades now. So if you had to start things all over from scratch today, what behaviors would you keep and what would you do differently?
Oh goodness, that is a tough question.
Lessons learned.
It is lessons learned. I think, well, what I have learned through the years is I've gotten a reinforcement in that there is a strong need out there, and the need is as great today as it was 20 years ago. And I think I probably would have been a little more aggressive a little earlier in my career. But I do believe that there still is a need for professional development. When I got started 20 years ago, the focus was more on technology training, and I was helping to drag people into the technology future. And then probably about 15 years ago, I realized that it's about team management, leadership development, that it's all about the people, and that technology is only a tool. And so the latter half of my career, I've been really looking at how do you get people to you have your technology skills, and those tools will change, and a skilled carpenter is still needed today, as
Mm-hmm.
that skilled carpenter was needed. But that skilled carpenter might have 10 or 12 junior carpenters working for him or her. And you need to develop those 10 or 12 people so that you can have some succession planning as well.
Mm-hmm.
So not so much it's a lessons learned. I think it's partially where the industry is and how I've adapted. But I think I've moved from training people on technology to helping people better leverage technology by using those professional people skills as tools.
Okay, wonderful. So, Susan, how can people get in contact with you to learn more about what you offer through the River Birch Group?
Well, they can send me an email at sgs@riverbirchgroup.com.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll give a quick plug. I wrote a book called Creating a Greater Whole that can be found on Amazon or on the CRC Press website. And it's an interactive type of experience. So we have stories that we tell, back it up with some facts, and then have a series of questions and answers where people can really see that they have a leader inside of them that just needs to be unearthed. And there's a series of questions that lets people see that they really are natural leaders and that they can move forward and start to practice some of those skills.
Okay. Well, Susan, thank you so much for taking the time today to talk with us. I really appreciate all of your insight and the stories you told. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Henry.